"This old man is ruining our lives. He mustn't come home," I overheard my daughter-in-law say the day before our family trip. "I'll take care of it," my son replied coldly. They laughed, and I quietly walked away. The next morning, they didn't wake up. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you are listening in the comments. The afternoon sun filtered through my living room windows, casting long shadows across the hardwood floor I'd installed myself 20 years ago. I was halfway through my coffee, reading an article about new construction techniques, when I heard the car pull into my driveway. The engine cut off abruptly. Car doors slammed. 2 of them. I wasn't expecting anyone. Through the window, I watched Edwin and Cora approach my front door. My son moved with that hunched posture he'd developed over the years, like he was always bracing for impact. Cora walked ahead of him, her stride purposeful, almost aggressive. She didn't knock. The door swung open before I could stand. "Dad, we need to talk," Edwin said. Not hello, not how are you, just that. "Come in," I said, though they already had. I set my coffee down carefully, buying myself a moment to read the room. Cora's jaw was set tight. Edwin wouldn't meet my eyes. They didn't sit. Cora planted herself in the center of my living room, arms crossed. "Lee, we're not going to waste time here. You're living alone in a 4-bedroom house, wasting money on property taxes and maintenance. Meanwhile, Edwin and I are stuck in a rental, throwing away nearly $2,000 a month." I blinked. The directness shouldn't have surprised me, but it did. "I'm doing fine here, Cora. This is my home." "That's not the point." She took a step closer. "We found a house, perfect neighborhood, good schools for when we have kids. We need $80,000 for the down payment." The number hung in the air like smoke. Edwin shifted his weight from foot to foot behind her. "That's a significant amount," I said slowly. "I have savings, but that's for my retirement, for what?" Cora cut me off. "You're 67 years old. You're not exactly spending it, are you? Just sitting here alone with your memories." Her eyes flicked to the mantel, where Marlene's photo sat in its silver frame. The dismissiveness in that glance made my chest tighten. "The money I've saved is meant to see me through whatever comes," I said, keeping my voice level. "Medical expenses, living costs, unexpected. It's our money anyway," Cora said flatly. "You're just holding on to it. We're asking for it earlier, that's all. Edwin's your only son, your only family." I looked past her to Edwin, my boy. The child Marlene and I had raised to be honest, to work hard, to stand on his own feet. He was staring at the floor, nodding slightly. "Edwin," I said, "is this what you want?" He opened his mouth, closed it, swallowed. "Dad, we really need this. The market's crazy right now, and if we don't move fast—" "I'm not saying no to helping you someday," I interrupted, "but $80,000 is nearly half of everything I have. I can't just hand that over." Cora's face flushed. "Can't? Or won't?" "Won't," I said clearly. "Not like this." The silence that followed felt like standing in a vacuum. Even the usual sounds of my house, the gentle tick of the kitchen clock, the hum of the refrigerator, seemed to disappear. "You're just a selfish man who doesn't think about family," Cora said. Her voice was cold, controlled. Somehow that made it worse than if she'd shouted. "We came here thinking you'd actually care about your son's future, but I guess we were wrong." She turned on her heel. Edwin followed, finally looking at me with something that might have been shame or might have been resentment. I couldn't tell anymore. "Cora, wait," he started, but she was already at the door. "We're leaving," she snapped. The door slammed behind them. Through the window, I watched them get into their car. Even from here, I could see Cora's mouth moving, rapid fire. Edwin sat motionless in the driver's seat for a long moment before starting the engine. The sound of their car faded down the street. I stood in my living room, surrounded by the silence they had left behind. My coffee had gone cold on the side table. The article I'd been reading lay open, the words meaningless now. I walked to the mantel and picked up Marlene's photo. Her smile looked back at me, frozen in that moment 3 summers before she passed. We'd been at the lake. She'd been laughing at something I said, her eyes bright with joy. "This isn't the son we raised," I whispered to her image. My hands trembled slightly as I set the frame back down. The empty house settled around me. I'd lived here for 32 years. Marlene and I had chosen every detail together, had filled these rooms with love and laughter and the ordinary chaos of family life. Edwin had learned to walk on this floor. We'd celebrated his graduation in this living room. Now it felt hollow, not because I was alone. I'd grown accustomed to that after Marlene's death, but because I'd just seen something I couldn't unsee. My son had become a stranger, worse than a stranger, a man who stood silent while his wife spoke to his father like an obstacle to be removed. I sat down heavily in my armchair. Outside, the afternoon sun continued its descent, indifferent to the fracture that had just split my world open. The calls started 3 days later. I was making dinner when my phone rang the first time. Edwin's name lit up the screen. I answered, stirring pasta sauce with my free hand. "Dad, hey." His voice had that forced casual tone people use when they're working up to something. "Listen, I wanted to apologize for how things went the other day. Cora was just stressed." "I understand stress," I said carefully. "But that doesn't change my answer, son." "Right, yeah, I get it." A pause. "It's just, this house, Dad. It's perfect for us. And the sellers are getting other offers. We might lose it." My chest ached. That plea in his voice reminded me of when he was 10, begging for a bicycle he'd seen in a store window. Back then, I'd worked overtime for 3 weeks to surprise him with it on his birthday. But this wasn't a bicycle. "I'm sorry you're in this position," I said, "but I can't help the way you're asking." He called again the next evening, and the evening after that. Each time, the script varied slightly. Cora was depressed about their housing situation. They'd never ask if it wasn't urgent. I was their only family. That last phrase landed like a stone each time. After Marlene died, after her parents passed years before, Edwin was all I had left too. By the 5th call, my jaw tightened the moment I saw his name on the screen. The guilt he was piling on felt calculated, rehearsed. Yet beneath my irritation lurked something else. The terrible thought that maybe I was being selfish. Maybe I was clinging to money I didn't need while my son struggled. On the 7th evening, he didn't call. He knocked on my door instead. "Dad, can I come in?" He looked tired, older than his 38 years, alone this time, no Cora directing the performance. "Of course." I stepped aside, and he walked past me into the living room. He sat on the edge of the couch, elbows on his knees, hands clasped together. I waited. "We took out a loan," he said finally, not looking at me. 18% interest. I thought you'd help us, so we went ahead and committed to the house purchase. Put down earnest money, signed preliminary papers." My stomach dropped. "Edwin, I know." He rubbed his face with both hands. "The payments are $1,400 a month, on top of our rent. We can't make it work, Dad. The numbers don't add up." I sat down slowly in my armchair, studying my son. His hair was thinning at the crown. When had that happened? Lines creased his forehead that hadn't been there a year ago. "You took out a predatory loan," I said quietly. "Betting on my money? I know how it sounds. How it sounds. Edwin, that's what you did." The anger I'd been suppressing flared hot in my chest. "You and Cora decided my savings were already yours, made financial decisions based on that assumption, and now you're here expecting me to bail you out. We're desperate. You're desperate because you manufactured this crisis." My voice rose despite my best efforts. I took a breath, forced myself to speak more calmly. "You put yourselves in this position on purpose, thinking I'd have no choice but to help. It's not like that?" But it was exactly like that. I could see it in the way he couldn't hold my gaze, in the defensive hunch of his shoulders. This was manipulation dressed up as a family emergency. Still, he was my son. The only piece of Marlene I had left walking and breathing in this world. "I'll give you $15,000, I said. The number came out before I'd fully decided on it. "That's more than generous. It should help you manage the loan payments until you can refinance or figure something else out." Edwin's face went blank. 15,000. Yes. "Dad, that won't solve anything. We need the full 80 for the down payment. Otherwise, you're in the hole for a loan you never should have taken," I finished. "Edwin, I'm offering to help, real help, but I'm not funding your house purchase. That's my final word." He stood up. The movement was abrupt, almost violent. For a moment, he just stared at me, and in his eyes, I saw something cold and distant, something I'd seen in Cora's face that first day. "That won't solve anything," he repeated flatly. No thank you. No acknowledgement that 15,000 was more money than most people could offer their children in a crisis. He walked to the door. His hand was on the knob when I spoke again. Edwin, what is this really about? He paused but didn't turn around. I don't know what you mean. If you're in financial trouble, there are other options. You could sell the car, cut expenses, talk to a financial counselor, but you're not doing any of that. You're just pushing me for this specific amount of money. Because we need it for the house. Do you, or is there something else going on? Now he did turn. His expression was carefully blank. You're reading too much into this, Dad. We need money. You have money. It's that simple. But it wasn't simple. Nothing about this felt simple anymore. He left without another word. I watched through the window as he sat in his car for several minutes before driving away. His phone glowed in his hand, texting Cora, probably, reporting back on the failed mission. I stood there long after his taillights disappeared, a suspicion creeping through my mind like cold water. Maybe this wasn't just about greed. Maybe it wasn't even primarily about money. Maybe they were planning something worse. The thought seemed paranoid, melodramatic, but I couldn't shake it. I knew my son, or I had known him once. The Edwin I raised wouldn't have done any of this, which meant either I'd failed completely as a father, or someone had gotten inside his head and rewired him into this desperate, hollow version of himself. Or perhaps the worst possibility. Maybe I'd never really known him at all. A week of silence followed Edwin's visit. No calls, no texts. I told myself I was relieved, but the quiet gnawed at me. The house felt larger somehow, emptier. I'd catch myself starting to dial his number, then stopping. What would I even say? Tuesday afternoon, I was replacing a loose floorboard in the hallway when I heard a car in my driveway. Through the window, I saw them both stepping out, Edwin carrying something behind his back, Cora smoothing her dress. They looked different, lighter. The doorbell rang. I opened it to find Edwin holding a bouquet of white lilies and yellow roses, the kind Marlene used to love. Dad, Edwin said, and his voice cracked slightly. We owe you an apology. Cora stepped forward, her face arranged in an expression of contrition I'd never seen before. Lee, we were awful to you. The stress of everything, it's no excuse. We said terrible things. I stood there, holding the door, searching their faces for the anger I'd seen before. It wasn't there. Or if it was, they'd buried it deep. Come in, I said finally. They settled on my couch, and Edwin placed the flowers on the coffee table between us. Cora leaned forward, hands clasped. We've been thinking, she began, and her tone was warm, almost pleading. About family, about what really matters. The money thing, we got obsessed with it, with fixing our problems. But we lost sight of you, of us. Edwin nodded. I was ashamed after I left last time. The way I acted, Dad. You offered to help, and I threw it back in your face. Something inside me softened despite my better judgment. This was what I'd wanted, wasn't it? My son, acknowledging his mistakes, trying to repair what had broken between us. We want to make it right, Cora continued. Not with money or demands, just with time, quality time together. Edwin reached into his jacket and pulled out an envelope. We booked a trip, the three of us. Paris, June 15th through the 22nd. My breath caught. Paris. Marlene had circled it on maps, collected travel guides, talked about the museums we'd visit, the cafes where we'd sit and watch the world go by. We'd been saving for it when she got sick. I know Mom always wanted to go there, Edwin said softly. You both did, and I thought, maybe we could do it together. The three of us, like a family should be. I picked up the envelope with hands that suddenly felt unsteady. Inside were 3 printed boarding passes, a hotel confirmation in the Marais district. You already paid for everything? I asked. We wanted it to be real, Cora said. Not just words, a genuine gesture to restore our family bonds, spend time together like old times. We leave in less than 2 weeks, Edwin added. I know it's sudden, but the tickets were a good deal, and we wanted to surprise you. I looked at my son, really looked at him. His eyes seemed sincere, even glassy with what might have been tears. Cora watched me with that same warm expression, encouraging, hopeful. Part of me screamed caution. The shift felt too abrupt, too convenient. But another part, the part that had been alone in this house for 3 years, that had eaten dinner by myself every night, that had nobody to call when something needed fixing except myself. That part desperately wanted to believe. "I don't know what to say," I managed. "Say yes," Edwin urged. He stood and crossed to me, wrapping me in a hug I hadn't expected. His arms felt strong around my shoulders, the way they had when he was younger, before Cora, before the distance grew between us. "Let me do this for you, Dad, for Mom's memory." When he pulled back, I saw Cora smiling at us, dabbing at her eye with one finger. "Yes," I heard myself say. "Yes, I'll go." The relief on their faces looked genuine. Edwin hugged me again. Cora came over and kissed my cheek, squeezed my hand. "You won't regret this," she promised. "We're going to have the most wonderful week." They stayed another hour, talking about the itinerary, the Eiffel Tower at sunset, the Louvre, a river cruise on the Seine. Cora showed me restaurant recommendations on her phone. Edwin reminisced about a family vacation we'd taken to the beach when he was 12, before everything got complicated. By the time they left, the sun was setting orange through my windows. I stood on the porch and waved as they drove away. Edwin waved back, grinning. Inside, I picked up the flowers they had brought and arranged them in Marlene's favorite vase. The lilies' scent filled the kitchen. I studied the boarding passes again, running my thumb over the departure date. Paris, with my son. A chance to heal what had been broken, to fulfill the dream Marlene and I had shared. But as I set the passes down, I remembered the look in Cora's eyes during that first confrontation. The coldness in Edwin's voice when he'd rejected my 15,000. And just for a second, I'd seen something flicker across both their faces today when I'd hesitated. Something sharp and impatient beneath the manufactured sweetness. I tried to push the thought away. They were trying. People could change, couldn't they? Relationships could be repaired. Still, as I turned off the lights and headed upstairs to bed, something small and insistent whispered in the back of my mind that I was missing something crucial, something dangerous. I ignored it. I wanted this too badly to listen. The days before the trip passed in a blur of preparation. I bought new luggage, updated my passport photos, made lists of what to pack. Edwin called twice to coordinate details, and each time he sounded genuinely excited. Maybe I'd been wrong to doubt them. Maybe this really was a new beginning. Thursday evening, June 13th, my phone rang at 8. Edwin. "Dad, hey, random question. Do you still have those insurance documents I left at your place? The ones from the dealership? I need to file something tomorrow before we leave." I checked the kitchen counter where I kept mail and papers. There they were, a manila envelope with his name on it. "Got them right here," I said. "Perfect. I'd come get them, but Cora and I are still packing. Could you possibly drop them by? I know it's late, but..." "No problem, son. I'll head over now." The drive to their apartment complex took 20 minutes. I'd only been there once before, shortly after they had moved in 2 years ago. It was a newer development in East Orlando, 3-story buildings arranged around a central courtyard with a pool. Their unit was on the ground floor, number 112. I parked in a visitor spot and walked along the sidewalk, carrying the envelope. Lights glowed behind their living room curtains. I raised my hand to knock, then paused. Voices carried through the closed window to my left. The glass was thin, the evening quiet. I shouldn't have been able to hear them so clearly, but I did. Sick of waiting. Cora's voice sharp and bitter. "This old man is ruining my life. A little more, and he'll give everything to some charity or that neighbor woman. He must not return from this trip home." I froze, hands still raised. The envelope slipped from my fingers, landing soundlessly on the doormat. A pause. Then Edwin. "I know, but we have to be smart about it." "You keep saying that," Cora snapped. "Meanwhile, he's sitting on hundreds of thousands while we drown in debt. I'm done being patient." "I'll take care of it." Edwin's voice was quieter but steady, certain. "In Paris, there are many places where people can get lost. The bridges over the Seine, the stairs at Montmartre, crowded metro platforms, an accident, and the problem is solved." Silence. Then, horrifyingly, they laughed. Not nervous laughter, but genuine amusement, as if they'd just shared a dark joke. "Just make sure you look devastated afterward," Cora said. "The grieving son. I'll play the supportive daughter-in-law." "I've been practicing," Edwin replied. More laughter. My heart hammered against my ribs so hard I thought it might break through. The world tilted sideways. I reached for the wall to steady myself, but my hand met only air. This couldn't be real. This couldn't be my son's voice, calmly discussing. I couldn't even think the word. My brain refused to form it. But I'd heard what I'd heard. Every word, every syllable. The casual cruelty of it, the planning, the laughter. My legs moved without conscious thought. I walked backward, away from their door, their window, their voices. Picked up the envelope from where it had fallen. Made it to my car somehow, though I have no memory of the steps between. I sat in the driver's seat, key in the ignition, staring through the windshield at nothing. The streetlight overhead cast everything in sickly yellow. A couple walked past with a small dog. Somewhere, children shouted at the pool, normal sounds. A normal evening in a normal apartment complex. Except my only son, my only child, the boy I'd taught to ride a bicycle, whose scraped knees I'd bandaged, who'd cried in my arms when his mother died, had just plotted my murder. The word finally formed in my mind. Murder. They were planning to murder me, for money, for my savings, my house, an inheritance they'd decided they deserved more than I deserved to live. Pain lanced through my chest, so sharp and sudden I gasped. This was worse than losing Marlene. She'd been taken by cancer, by fate, by something beyond anyone's control. But Edwin was choosing this, actively, consciously choosing to end my life. I sat there in that parked car for how long? I don't know. Could have been minutes, could have been an hour. The pain was enormous, all-consuming. It filled every part of me until I thought I might drown in it. But then, slowly, gradually, the pain began to change. It hardened, crystallized into something cold and sharp and utterly clear. They thought I was a problem to be solved, an obstacle to be removed. A foolish old man too naive to see the trap they'd set, too eager for reconciliation to question their sudden change of heart. They thought I'd walk onto that plane, smile through their performance, never suspect until it was too late. They'd underestimated me. My hands had stopped trembling, my heart rate slowed. I started the engine, my movements precise and deliberate. The grief was still there. It would always be there now. But something else had taken root beside it, something patient and calculating and absolutely pitiless. If they wanted to play this game, I would play it better. I pulled out of the parking lot without looking back at their lighted window. In my rearview mirror, their apartment receded into the distance. Let them think I was coming to Paris as their victim. Let them believe their plan would work. I would show them exactly what happened when you mistook mercy for weakness. I don't remember the drive home. Streetlights blurred past. When I pulled into my driveway, I sat for another 10 minutes before my hands would release the steering wheel. Inside, the house was exactly as I'd left it. Coffee cup on the counter, newspaper folded on the table, everything in its place, normal, mundane, as if the world hadn't just tilted sideways and dumped me into a nightmare. I moved to the kitchen table and sat down. The same chair where I'd eaten breakfast with Marlene 1,000 mornings. The clock on the wall ticked steadily. 11:15. My mind kept replaying the conversation. Cora's voice. This old man must not return from this trip. Edwin's response. An accident, and the problem is solved. Their laughter. The boy I'd taught to throw a baseball wanted me dead. Around midnight, something broke inside me, not loudly. There were no tears, no shouting at the empty house. Instead, everything that hurt, the betrayal, the grief, the disbelief, began to harden, calcify, transform into something cold and useful. I stood and poured myself water at the sink, drank it slowly, set the glass down with deliberate care. If they wanted to play this game, I would show them how it was really done. My construction engineer training kicked in like muscle memory. Every project started the same way. Assess the situation, identify the problem, design the solution, execute with precision. This was just another problem that needed solving. I grabbed a notepad and pen, sat back down, and started writing. Problem: Edwin and Cora planned to murder me in Paris for my inheritance. Solution framework emerged in 4 parts. 1. Prevent the trip. They couldn't harm me if we never left the country. I needed them incapacitated on departure day, confused, unable to travel. 2. Change my will immediately. Cut them out completely. Everything I owned would go somewhere they could never touch it. 3. Gather irrefutable proof of their conspiracy. Audio, video, their own words admitting intent. Evidence that would bury them if they tried anything. 4. Show them they lost. Make them understand exactly what their greed had cost them. I studied my notes. The plan had gaps, but the foundation was solid. Now I needed the tools to build it. First problem: how to stop them from making that flight. An idea surfaced, uncomfortable but effective. I stood and walked to the bathroom, opening the medicine cabinet. Marlene's prescriptions were still there, 3 years after her death. I'd never had the heart to throw them away. My fingers found the orange bottle in the back. Ambien, 10 milligram tablets. Her doctor had prescribed them during the worst of her illness, when pain kept her awake. I'd administered these pills myself, knew their effects intimately. 1 tablet produced 8 hours of deep, dreamless sleep. 2 tablets, 10 to 12 hours minimum. And a documented side effect: short-term memory loss, especially if taken without food. I held the bottle up to the light. 30 pills remaining, more than enough. The moral line I was about to cross registered somewhere in my conscience, but I stepped over it anyway. They'd crossed a far worse line first. Back at the kitchen table, I added details to my plan. Tomorrow, no, today now, it was past 1 a.m. I'd need to call Robert Kendrick, the estate attorney I'd used when Marlene passed. His office was here in Windermere. I still had his card somewhere. I found it in my desk drawer, along with the file from when we drafted my original will. Kendrick was expensive, $350 an hour, but thorough. I'd need that thoroughness now. At 2 a.m., I was still sitting at that table, notepad covered in precise handwriting, time frames, contingencies, resource requirements. The same methodical process I'd used to plan construction projects, now applied to something far darker. 3 a.m. The house settled around me with small creaks and sighs. Outside, Windermere slept peacefully. Inside, I mapped out the destruction of my son's schemes, with the same care I'd once used to design load-bearing structures. 4 a.m. I made fresh coffee, though I knew sleep wouldn't come regardless. Sat back down, refined the details. 5 a.m. The first hints of dawn touched the kitchen window. I'd been sitting here for 6 hours straight, and the plan was complete. Every step clear, every tool identified, every outcome calculated. I looked at the Ambien bottle sitting on the table beside my notes. Such a small thing, such enormous consequences. By 6:30, the sun had risen fully. A new day, June 14th. The day I stopped being a victim and became something else entirely. I picked up my phone and set an alarm for 8 a.m. 2 hours to shower, dress, prepare for what came next. Then I'd make the call to Kendrick's office, start putting pieces in motion. Lee Holmes, the retired construction engineer, the grieving widower, the disappointed father. That man had died last night outside Edwin's apartment. The man sitting at this kitchen table as dawn broke was someone different, someone capable of doing what needed to be done. I stood, joints stiff from hours of immobility, placed the Ambien bottle carefully in my pocket, looked at my reflection in the dark window glass. "Let's build something," I said to that reflection. "Time to get to work." By 7 a.m., I'd showered, shaved, and dressed in pressed slacks and a button-down shirt. The man in the mirror looked composed, ordinary. Nobody seeing me would guess what I'd spent the night planning. I ate breakfast methodically, toast, eggs, coffee, because the body needed fuel even when the mind was elsewhere. At 8 sharp, I dialed Kendrick's office. His secretary answered. "Kendrick Law, how may I help you?" "This is Lee Holmes. I need to see Mr. Kendrick this morning. It's urgent." A pause while she checked the schedule. "He has an opening at 9:15. Would that work?" "Perfect." His office was 10 minutes from my house, in a professional building near the lake. I arrived early, sat in my car reviewing my story. Keep it simple. Financial manipulation by my son. Need to change the will. Don't mention murder. That would trigger obligations, maybe police involvement. Just paint Edwin as greedy and manipulative, which was absolutely true. Kendrick's office hadn't changed. Diplomas on the wall, family photos on the desk, leather chairs worn comfortable with use. He stood to shake my hand, his grip firm. "Lee, good to see you. Though I'm sorry it's under difficult circumstances." He gestured to a chair. "Your secretary mentioned urgency regarding your estate?" I sat forward, hands clasped. "My son has been pressuring me for money, significant amounts. When I refused, the things got hostile. I want to change my will to protect my assets from his manipulation." Kendrick's expression remained professionally neutral. I understand. What changes did you have in mind? I want everything, house, savings, investments, to go to a charity fund helping elderly people. My son receives $10,000 as a symbolic amount, nothing more. He made notes on a yellow legal pad. That's certainly your right. The symbolic bequest actually strengthens the document, shows you didn't forget him, you deliberately limited his inheritance, makes it harder to contest. That's what I want, and I need it done quickly. Tomorrow, if possible. I can have the draft ready by noon tomorrow, June 16th. We'll need 2 witnesses and a notary for signing, but I can arrange that. He looked up. I should also recommend adding a no contest clause. If Edwin tries to challenge the will, he forfeits even the $10,000. Include that, I said. And one more thing. I want documentation that this change is due to his attempted financial manipulation of me, something that makes my reasoning clear. Kendrick nodded slowly. I can add a statement to the will explaining your decision, citing his behavior as the cause. That creates a record. How much will this cost? Flat fee for expedited estate revision, $2,000. I didn't flinch. Done. We spent another 20 minutes on specifics, naming the charity, detailing the property inventory, discussing executor options. Kendrick asked few questions, respecting client confidentiality. By 10:15, I was walking back to my car with a receipt and a promise. Documents ready tomorrow at noon. Next stop, electronics store. Best Buy was 15 minutes away, already busy with morning shoppers. I found what I needed in the security section. 2 miniature cameras with built-in recording capability, $89 each. And in the audio department, a high-quality voice recorder, $45. The clerk, a young woman with bright purple hair, asked cheerfully, "Setting up home security?" "Checking on an elderly neighbor," I lied smoothly. "Want to make sure she's safe when I'm not around." "These cameras are great for that. Battery-powered, motion-activated, record up to 12 hours. Perfect." I paid cash, left the store with my equipment in a nondescript plastic bag. Back home by 11:30, I spent the afternoon reviewing the plan, tested the cameras, made sure the voice recorder worked, examined the Ambien pills, counting out the doses I'd need. Everything had to happen tonight. Tomorrow morning, they'd wake up too late for the flight, confused and disoriented, while I was at Kendrick's office signing documents that would strip them of everything they'd schemed to steal. But I needed one more piece, access to their apartment. I couldn't just show up and start drugging them. I needed an excuse, something that would get me through their door, make them lower their guard. At 6:30 that evening, I called Edwin's number. He answered on the second ring. "Dad?" "Hey, son." I kept my voice warm, paternal. "I've been thinking about tomorrow, about Paris, and I realized I was being stubborn before." "Oh?" Cautious hope in his voice. "I want to come by this evening, bring you a gift before we leave, something to celebrate this trip, our family coming back together." Silence for 3 heartbeats. Then, "That would be wonderful, Dad. Really wonderful." I heard Cora in the background. "What did he say?" Edwin's voice, muffled. "He's bringing a gift, coming over tonight." When he came back on the line, his tone was warmer, almost excited. "What time should we expect you?" "I'm finishing up some things here. Say 8 o'clock? "Perfect. We'll see you then." After we hung up, I sat staring at the phone. They thought I was capitulating, bringing money probably, or at least my blessing. They thought their manipulation had worked, that the Paris plan could proceed smoothly. Let them think that for a few more hours. I went to my wine rack and selected a bottle of Merlot, Marlene's favorite, though neither Edwin nor Cora would know that. Upscale enough to seem like a peace offering. The foil around the cork could be removed and replaced. Easy to inject the dissolved Ambien through the cork itself with a syringe. I'd learned that trick from a mystery novel Marlene used to read. Funny how small details lodge in your memory. In my garage, I found the syringe from a home medication kit. Crush 6 Ambien tablets in a mortar and pestle, dissolve them in warm water, triple dose, enough to put both of them under for 12 hours minimum, with significant memory disruption. The syringe pierced the cork cleanly. I injected the solution into the wine, then carefully resealed the foil. Unless they examined it closely, they'd never notice the tampering. I packed the cameras and voice recorder in my jacket pockets, rehearsed what I'd say, how I'd act, the loving father, eager to reconcile, apologetic for my earlier stubbornness. suggesting we share a glass of wine to toast the trip. 7:45. I loaded the wine into my car, started the engine. The evening was warm, humid with the approaching summer heat. Windermere's streets were quiet, families inside having dinner, children playing in backyard pools. Everything looked so normal. I checked my rearview mirror as I pulled out of my driveway. The house where Marlene and I had raised Edwin, built our life together. After tonight, nothing would ever be the same, but it was already too late for regrets. They'd made their choice when they plotted my murder. Now, I was making mine. I drove toward their apartment, the drugged wine sitting innocently in my passenger seat. Time to show them what happened when you mistook an old man's patience for weakness. I stopped at a liquor store on Colonial Drive. $65 for a Cabernet Sauvignon, more than I'd ever spent on wine. But tonight wasn't about money. The bottle felt substantial in my hands, the label elegant, perfect for a celebration. At a nearby grocery, I added cheese, crackers, grapes, the kind of spread that said, "I'm making an effort. I care about this moment." My final stop before their apartment was my own garage. I retrieved the crushed Ambien I'd prepared that morning, 6 tablets ground to fine powder, stored in a small plastic bag, 20 milligrams for each of them. Double the standard dose. By 7 o'clock, I was knocking on their door. Edwin answered with a wide smile. "Dad, come in, come in." Their living room was cluttered with half-packed suitcases, travel guides spread across the coffee table, passports stacked beside a printed itinerary, the scene of excited travelers, counting down hours. Cora emerged from the bedroom, her expression shifting from surprise to pleasure. "Lee, this is so thoughtful." I held up the wine and snacks. "Let's celebrate the trip properly. Tomorrow you'll be too busy with the airport, so tonight, a toast to family." "That's beautiful," Cora said, and I almost believed the warmth in her voice. She took the cheese and crackers to the kitchen, while Edwin cleared space on their table. I opened the Cabernet with the corkscrew they provided, letting it breathe for a moment. The wine was deep garnet, catching the lamplight. I poured 3 glasses carefully, the ritual of it calming. "To Paris," I said, raising my glass. "To new memories and restored bonds." "To family," Edwin echoed. We clinked glasses. The wine was smooth, rich with oak and dark fruit. They both drank deeply, clearly pleased with the quality. We settled into conversation, where they'd visit first, which museums topped their list, whether they'd take the train to Versailles. Edwin told stories about colleagues who'd gone to Paris. Cora showed me photos on her phone of the hotel in the Marais district. Normal, pleasant, like families should be. Except, I was counting minutes. 20 minutes in, Cora stood. "I need to grab the camera charger from the bedroom. Keep talking, I'll be right back." The moment she disappeared down the hallway, my hand moved to my jacket pocket. The bag of crushed Ambien came out smoothly. I leaned forward as if adjusting the cheese plate, and in 3 seconds, the powder was divided between their 2 glasses. The wine's dark color hid everything. I gave each glass a gentle swirl to dissolve the medication completely. By the time Cora returned, I was sitting back, relaxed, asking Edwin about his favorite wines. "This one's fantastic," he said, taking another long drink. "Where'd you find it?" "Wine shop near Lake Ivanhoe. The owner recommended it specifically for celebrations." We talked for another 30 minutes, about Marlene, about my house, about nothing important. I sipped my own untainted wine slowly, watching them drain theirs. At 8:30, Cora yawned. "Excuse me, I don't know why I'm so tired all of a sudden." "Long day of packing," Edwin suggested, but his own eyes looked heavy. He blinked slowly, like someone fighting to stay awake. "Maybe we should call it an early night," Cora said. She yawned again, wider this time. "The alarm's set for 6:30 tomorrow." "Good idea," I agreed. "You'll want to be rested." Edwin stood, swayed slightly. "Whoa, guess I'm more exhausted than I thought." "Why don't you sit back down?" I suggested gently. "Finish the wine first." They settled back onto the couch, both of them blinking heavily now. Cora's head tilted against the cushions. Edwin rubbed his eyes. "I'm so tired," Cora murmured. "This is weird." "Just stress," I said. "Travel prep takes it out of you." Edwin tried to respond but couldn't quite form the words. His eyes closed, opened, closed again. By 8:45, they were both asleep. Cora had curled sideways on the couch, her breathing deep and even. Edwin had slumped back, mouth slightly open, completely unconscious. I waited 5 minutes to be certain. Neither moved, neither stirred when I stood and walked past them. Their pulses were steady when I checked. 70 beats per minute for Cora, 68 for Edwin, breathing regular, skin warm, everything normal, just as I'd expected. Ambien wasn't dangerous at this dose, only effective. I found their phones on the kitchen counter, both charging. Edwin's unlocked with his thumbprint. I pressed his limp thumb to the sensor. Inside, text messages about the trip, emails from the airline, and there, the flight confirmation. Orlando International to Paris. Charles de Gaulle, departing 10:30 a.m., gate notification to come via text at 7 a.m. They'd need to leave their apartment by 8 at the latest. Wake up by 6:30 to shower, finish packing, eat. I checked the time, 8:52 p.m. They wouldn't wake until 9 or 10 tomorrow morning at the earliest, more likely 11. And when they did, their memories of this evening would be fragments at best. The Ambien would see to that. I placed their phones back exactly where I'd found them, rinsed my wine glass and set it in the dish drainer, packed up the remaining cheese and crackers carefully, leaving no evidence I'd tampered with anything. Before leaving, I stood in their doorway and looked back at them sleeping, my son and his wife, vulnerable and trusting, believing I'd come in peace. They'd plotted to push me off a bridge or down the stairs of Montmartre, to watch me fall and then play the devastated family. Instead, they'd wake up tomorrow to ruins. I locked the door behind me, they'd given me the spare key months ago, and walked to my car through the warm Florida night. Phase 1, complete. I slept surprisingly well that night. By 6 a.m., I was showered, dressed, and driving back toward their apartment complex. I parked 2 buildings down, in a visitor spot with a clear view of their living room window. The sun rose slowly, painting the sky orange and pink. I'd brought coffee in a thermos and the Orlando Sentinel. To anyone watching, I looked like a resident catching up on news before work. But I was waiting. 7 o'clock arrived. Inside that apartment, alarms would be ringing. Edwin's phone, programmed to wake them. But they wouldn't hear it through the pharmaceutical fog. 7:30. Backup alarms. Cora's phone joining the chorus. Still no movement at the window. 8 o'clock. The time they should have been loading their car, heading for the airport. But the curtains stayed drawn, the apartment silent. I sipped my coffee and imagined the scene inside. Both of them sprawled where I'd left them, dead to the world. Phones buzzing uselessly on the kitchen counter. 8:30. They'd missed their window. Even if they woke right now, they couldn't make check-in. 9 o'clock. Check-in closed. The gate agents would process other passengers, seal the manifest. I pulled out my own phone and checked the flight status. Orlando to Paris, Air France 9 departing gate 42. Status, on time, 10:30. I watched the seconds tick past on my dashboard clock. Somewhere above Florida, that plane was climbing into the sky with 2 empty seats, row 23, seats A and B. $3,400 in non-refundable tickets. Gone. At 11:15, movement finally appeared at their window. A figure, Cora, from the frantic way she moved. She grabbed the curtain, pulled it back, stared out at the parking lot. Even from this distance, I could read her body language. Panic. Edwin appeared behind her, slower, holding his head with both hands. The confusion of someone who'd lost hours and didn't know how. Cora spun away from the window. Her arms gestured wildly. I couldn't hear the words, but I could imagine them. The flight. We missed the flight. Edwin checked his phone. His whole body seemed to collapse inward. She paced back and forth across the visible space of the living room, picked up her phone, made a call, airline probably, desperately asking about later flights, rebooking, anything. Edwin sat heavily on something out of view. His shoulders slumped. Cora's pacing grew more agitated. She was shouting now, at Edwin, at the airline representative, at the universe. The non-refundable nature of those tickets would be hitting her like a hammer. All that money, gone. The plan they'd invested in, destroyed. She tried another call. This one was shorter. Then another. My phone buzzed in my hand. Edwin's name on the screen. I watched him through the window, phone pressed to his ear, waiting for me to answer. I declined the call. Cora tried next. Her name lit up my screen while I watched her pace frantically in their apartment. I declined again. They tried 3 more times in rapid succession, probably thinking, did he oversleep too? Did something happen to him? Maybe he went to the airport alone? The irony was rich. They couldn't imagine the truth, that I was sitting 2 buildings away, watching their crisis unfold like a play I'd written and directed. Edwin appeared at the window now, staring out at the parking lot, looking for my car maybe, wondering if I'd already left for the airport without them. Cora joined him. They stood together, both staring out, and I could see the argument happening. Whose fault was this? Why were they so tired? What had happened last night? The Ambien would have erased their memories after 8:30. They'd remember me arriving, the wine, the conversation. But the drowsiness, the falling asleep, that would be blank space. Confusion where clarity should be. Maybe Cora would suspect the wine had been drugged, but how could she prove it? The bottle was in their recycling. Her system would clear the medication in hours. No evidence, just a strange, exhausted sleep and a catastrophic missed flight. I finished my coffee and started the engine. They were still at the window, but I'd seen enough. The devastation was complete. While they dealt with airline representatives and tried to piece together what happened, I had other places to be. Kendrick's office opened at noon, and I had a will to sign. After that, I'd need to plan the next phase, getting those cameras installed, recording their confession. But for now, I allowed myself a moment of quiet satisfaction. They'd plotted my death over wine and laughter. I'd returned the favor, not with violence, but with precision. They'd wanted to make me disappear in Paris. Instead, I'd made Paris disappear from them. I pulled out of the parking spot carefully, checking my mirrors. Their apartment receded in the rearview mirror. I didn't look back. There was still work to do. I grabbed coffee and a sandwich from a drive-thru, ate while navigating back toward Windermere. By 12:30, I was parking outside Kendrick's office, the certified will documents waiting inside. His secretary greeted me warmly. "Mr. Holmes, right on time. Robert has everything ready." Kendrick's office felt different today. Not just a lawyer's workspace, but a place where futures were rewritten. He stood, shaking my hand firmly. "Lee, the documents are prepared exactly as we discussed." He gestured to his desk, where papers lay arranged in neat stacks. "I've asked my secretary and our notary to witness the signing." The secretary entered with an older woman, carrying an official stamp and logbook. We settled around the desk like participants in a ceremony, which I suppose we were. Kendrick walked me through each page. "This clause stipulates all assets, house, savings, investments, transferred to the Central Florida Elderly Care Foundation upon your death. Your son Edwin receives a bequest of $10,000, which acknowledges him while clearly limiting his inheritance." "And the contest provision?" I asked. "Here." He pointed to a paragraph dense with legal language. "If Edwin challenges this will in any way, he forfeits even the $10,000. The document also includes your statement about his financial manipulation as justification for these terms." I signed where indicated. My signature looked steady, controlled. The secretary signed as witness. The notary added her name, pressed her seal into the paper with a satisfying thunk, and recorded the transaction in her log. "Effective immediately," Kendrick said, sliding a certified copy across the desk. "I'll file the original with the county clerk this afternoon. Your estate is now protected." I paid his fee with a check, thanked everyone, and walked out carrying legal proof that Edwin's greed would gain him nothing. 1:15. I drove toward their apartment, checking for their car in the lot. Empty space where Edwin usually parked. They'd gone to the airline office, probably, arguing about refunds they'd never receive. I used the spare key they'd given me 6 months ago. "Dad, just in case we're out of town and a pipe bursts or something." Now, it let me into their empty apartment. Evidence of chaos surrounded me. Suitcases lay open on the bedroom floor, clothes half-packed. Travel documents scattered across the kitchen counter. The wine bottle from last night sat in the recycling bin, completely drained. I worked quickly. First camera, living room, behind a frame poster of the Eiffel Tower they'd hung in anticipation of the trip. The irony wasn't lost on me. The camera was smaller than my thumb, lens barely visible through a tiny gap I created by tilting the frame slightly forward. I pulled out my phone and opened the surveillance app. The camera connected instantly, showing me a clear view of their couch and coffee table. Second camera, bedroom, inside the digital alarm clock on Edwin's nightstand. I unscrewed the back panel, nestled the camera among the wiring, and closed it up. Another perfect angle, their bed, the doorway, anyone entering or leaving. The voice recorder went under the couch cushion, activated and ready. Battery life, 48 hours of continuous recording. I tested everything twice. Both cameras transmitted clearly. Audio came through crisp and clean. Anyone sitting in that living room would be recorded from 3 different angles. By 2 o'clock, I was locking their door behind me, equipment installed and operational. I drove home, made fresh coffee, and settled into my study with my phone propped on the desk. The split-screen app showed both camera feeds. Empty apartment, waiting. 3 o'clock, 3:30. I read a book with one eye on the screen. At 4 o'clock, the apartment door opened. Edwin entered first, shoulders sagging, face drawn. Cora followed, slamming the door hard enough that the camera shook slightly. I turned up the audio volume. Non-refundable means non-refundable, Edwin was saying. They made that clear from the beginning. $3,400. Cora's voice was sharp, furious. Just gone. What do you want me to do about it? She spun on him. That old man did something? This can't be coincidence? Cora, we're fine 1 minute, then both of us pass out. Wake up 12 hours later? That's not normal. Edwin rubbed his face. Maybe we drank more than we thought. The wine was strong. Don't be stupid. She paced across the living room, directly in front of the camera. Her expression was twisted with anger and something else. Fear. He knows. Maybe he overheard us that evening. My pulse quickened. There it was. You don't know that, Edwin said, but his voice wavered. When else would he have found out? We were careful everywhere except... She trailed off. Our own apartment. That night we were discussing... everything. Keep your voice down. Why? Nobody can hear us now? She gestured around the empty apartment, not knowing how wrong she was. But what if he heard us then? Outside the window or something? Edwin sat heavily on the couch. If he knew, he'd have said something. Would he? Cora's laugh was bitter. Your father's smarter than you give him credit for. What if he's been planning this whole time? Planning what? Revenge, payback, making sure we get nothing. The word nothing hung in the air. Edwin's face had gone pale. We need to be smart about this, Cora continued, her voice dropping to something almost calculating. We need to figure out what he knows and what he's done about it. And if he knows about what we discussed, she met his eyes, then we have a serious problem. Because if anything happens to him now, we're the obvious suspects. We're trapped. The camera captured every word, every expression. I saved the recording to my phone and backed it up to the cloud immediately. They talked for another 20 minutes, circling around their plot without quite naming it, but the implications were crystal clear. Conspiracy, intent, guilt. By 4:30, I had everything I needed. Legal documentation, video evidence, audio confession. The trap had closed completely, and they were caught inside. I sat back in my chair, watching them argue on the screen, and felt something I hadn't felt in months. Absolute security. They couldn't touch me now. Every move they'd made, every word they'd spoken, had built the cage around themselves. Tomorrow, I'd show them exactly what they'd lost. That evening, I watched the recording 3 times, ensuring every word was clear, every face visible. By morning, Edwin had texted, Dad, we need to talk, urgent. I replied simply, I'll be there at 10. The drive to their apartment felt different this time. No more playing roles, no more pretending, just a reckoning. At 10 sharp, I knocked on their door. Edwin opened it, his face drawn and wary. Cora stood behind him, arms crossed, jaw set. Come in, Edwin said quietly. Their living room felt smaller with the 3 of us inside and all that unsaid tension. We sat, me in the armchair, them on the couch. The same couch where they'd fallen asleep 3 nights ago. Cora didn't waste time. You deliberately sabotaged our trip. What did you put in the wine? I met her eyes calmly. I just helped you not make a mistake. You didn't fly to Paris, and I'm alive. Wonderful coincidence, isn't it? Edwin's face drained of color. You overheard? June 13th by your window. He must not return home, remember? I kept my voice level, conversational. In Paris, where people can get lost, an accident. The problem solved. The silence was absolute. Even the sounds from outside, traffic, birds, distant voices, seemed to disappear. Cora tried to recover. You're imagining. I'm not. I pulled the folded document from my jacket. New will, certified yesterday. You'll receive $10,000 after my death, if I live to a natural end. Everything else goes to the Central Florida Elderly Care Foundation. I placed it on the coffee table between us. Edwin reached for it with shaking hands, scanned the text, and set it down like it burned. 10,000, Cora repeated flatly. That's right. The rest, the house, the savings, all of it, goes to help people who actually need it, not to children plotting their father's murder. You can't prove, Cora started. I held up my phone. Actually, I can. I pressed play. The video filled the screen, Cora pacing in this very room yesterday. That old man did something. This can't be coincidence. Her own voice, her own face, crystal clear. Then Edwin. If he knows about what we discussed, Cora, then we're trapped. I stopped the playback. 2 cameras in this apartment, 1 voice recorder, all installed yesterday while you were at the airline office. Everything you've said since has been recorded. Edwin's hand went to his mouth. Cora just stared at the phone. Here's how this works, I continued. If anything happens to me, accident, illness, suspicious circumstances of any kind, these recordings automatically go to the Orlando Police Department, the FBI, and both of your employers. I've arranged it with my attorney, a dead man's switch, they call it. You're bluffing, Cora said, but there was no conviction in her voice. Test me. I stood, pocketing my phone. Try anything, and you'll spend years in prison for conspiracy to commit murder. Your jobs, your futures, your freedom, all gone. Or you can live with your debts and your choices and leave me alone. Edwin found his voice. Dad, we didn't mean... Yes, you did. I looked at my son, really looked at him, and saw a stranger. You meant every word. You were willing to kill me for money you never earned. And now you get to live knowing I know exactly what you are. Cora tried one more time. If you had any proof that would actually hold up in court. You played the game and lost, I interrupted. Live with your debts and conscience. That's your punishment. I walked to the door. My hand was on the knob when Edwin spoke again. I'm sorry, he said. The words sounded hollow. I didn't turn around. No, you're not. You're just sorry you got caught. Outside, the Florida sun was bright and warm. I drove home with the windows down, air streaming through the car, carrying away the weight I'd been holding for weeks. That evening passed quietly. My phone didn't ring, no texts appeared. They were smart enough to know silence was their only option now. The next morning, June 18th, I sat on my porch with coffee and the newspaper as the sun climbed over Windermere's calm streets. Everything looked the same as it had 2 months ago, but I felt fundamentally different, protected, free. Morning, Lee, Margaret Chen approached from next door, carrying a covered dish. Her smile was genuine, uncomplicated. Made too much peach pie yesterday, she said. Thought you might want some. Margaret, you're a lifesaver. Come sit a minute. She settled into the chair beside me, and we talked about nothing important. Her grandchildren visiting next month, the new restaurant opening downtown, whether the summer would be unbearable or just typically hot. Normal conversation. Normal life. The kind of peaceful morning I'd thought I'd lost forever. When she left, I sat alone with the pie and my coffee, watching sunlight filter through the oak trees lining my street. My phone sat silent on the table beside me. Edwin and Cora wouldn't call, couldn't call. They were trapped by their own greed and my careful planning. I'd lost my son. That truth settled in my chest like a stone. Not to death or distance, but to something worse. To the knowledge of what he'd become, what he'd been willing to do. But I'd kept my life, my home, my freedom. And I'd made sure that people who needed help would benefit from what I'd built instead of the people who'd plotted to destroy me. The coffee was perfect. The morning was beautiful. Margaret's pie would be delicious. I smiled, genuinely smiled, for the first time in months. Justice had been served, not through violence or vengeance, but through patience and preparation. They'd tried to make me disappear. Instead, I'd made their future disappear, and I was still here, breathing the warm air, watching the world turn, living the life they'd tried to steal. That was enough. If you like this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your impressions of this story.